What's up, everybody, and welcome. So, I recently broke 2200 on lichess, which is my first time ever getting to 2200 in a bullet time control. So, this is me right here. So, I'm just going to go to my profile. There you go. As you can see, I gained 73 rating points on this particular day. I actually went on a crazy 15 game win streak. So, I lost this game right here just before I got 2200, but then I continued to win these other games, and the games before that were all victories. So I thought I'd start looking at my games from, or at least the most instructive games from here. As you can see, I lost the first game against this guy. They challenged me to a rematch, and I took it. So while we're going through the games, I'm also going to share some tips. Typically, I break my milestones on stream, but this time around, I wasn't expecting to go on a crazy win streak, and it just happened. So let's go straight into the first game. I already have the games opened up, so I'll just be switching tabs. So let's go with the first one. Now I'm going to be using the real-time replay on lichess because I want to mimic how it actually feels when you're playing the game, right? So luckily for us, this shows us how the moves were played in real time. As you can see, my opponent played a London here, and then bullet, I'm not really afraid of the London because I feel like the London gives us an easy play, right? So right now, the most important thing that I'm doing is I'm trying to maintain like a lead on the clock. As you can see, my opponent is down to 48 seconds. I have 51 seconds. Here we trade. We're going to trade the bishops very soon. So these bishops are going to get traded. So like I said, we're mimicking, like this analysis board is mimicking what was actually happening during the game. So interestingly, we got to win that pawn. We'll try to win this pawn shortly with our queen. The blue arrow represents the best move recommended by Stockfish. And here my opponent just blundered a piece. And this can sometimes happen in bullet because of the time usage, right? When somebody's low on time, suddenly they want to start pre-moving. So that was the very first game. Nothing crazy. Let's go to the second game. Now I should say that I've picked up the Nimzolarsen, so 1b3. As you can see, this opening allows me to play incredibly quickly. My plan is 1b3, bishop b7, e6, and maybe bishop e2, and then go for c4 and c5. So I usually have different variations of this opening. And the thing I like about this is my plan is relatively simple. As you see throughout the video, I'll pretty much be getting this pawn structure and this type of development. Okay. In this game, I decided to castle queenside only because I had lost the very first game to this guy and I had castled kingside. So I was trying to go for something different. So, bullet trick number one for me is, I wouldn't say a bullet trick, but more of a tip is try to play a system opening. At least that's what's helped me, right? Previously, I was playing the same opening in bullet, blitz, rapid. I like to go for the Italian, but I've switched to the Nimzo Larsen and I've had crazy results in bullet, right? I recently broke 2100 and already have gotten to 2200. And this is because we have easy plans and typically you play really fast. I have 38 seconds at this point, my opponent has 21. So despite the fact that my position is far, far worse, my opponent knows that there is a possibility that they might lose on the clock. So in this game, I remember trying to set up this fork here, right? I want to fork the rook and the queen. My opponent actually doesn't see it and blunders in one move. They decided to move their king, and this is just GG's because now their queen is forked and the king is forked, and in this case, they're also going to lose the queen. So I would say the bullet trick number one, if there was any, is to know your openings. All right, so let's go to the next game. Next game. Okay, we're just gonna do the same thing, real time. This is another London system. I don't know. The setup that I go for is knight c3. Of course, this is a mistake apparently because of queen b3, but this is bullet. As you can see, we're just blitzing out, or maybe bulleting out the moves is a more appropriate term. Because now I know what my opponent goes for, which means I already know that they're gonna make these moves at the very beginning. So I'm pretty much pre-moving when I can, making sure I'm not blundering anything, right? So that kind of helps. And for me personally, I'm not afraid of accepting matches. So I should say that I played the first 7 games that I'm going to show. I might skip some of them against the same guy, and then the rest of the games are against different opponents. So for me, I am not afraid of rematches because I want my rating to match my actual skill, right? I don't want to gain a rating just by luck. I want that gaining it by my actual skill means that I'll be able to maintain that rating, right? So the rating is just a reflection of the skill that I have. Okay, here I actually blundered in one move because they could try to pin my knight in some way, right? This knight can't move because the queen is behind it. They cannot take it right now because I take back, but I actually realized I blundered after the move, but my opponent must have been tilted because they resigned in this position. So that was sort of lucky for us, right? Okay, now we look at the next game again, real-time analysis. So let's go. This game I decided to switch things up with 1e4. Actually, this wasn't interesting because I ended up blundering a pawn. So it was this very in against the Scandinavian I play knight f3. So in bullet it helps to have like a weapon against different openings because you only have 1 minute for the entire game, right? You don't want to waste that time thinking on what you should do on move 4. So at this level, at least having a decent repertoire is important. So anyways, I was pretty much losing for the entirety of this game, but at this point, I know that I'm going to speed up at some point during this game. So again, bullet is one of the few time formats or time controls where it's okay to win by flagging, right? It's like the nature of the game. Flagging is part of the game. So I opted for these doubled pawns here because I didn't want to bring my knight out to c3 early on because I didn't want to trade here. Okay, here I'm a pawn down actually, but let's see. I go back, and here I actually just lost my bishop because it was trapped. Now I'm a piece down, but as you see during the game, I'm trying to create complications. Okay, check. Now I go back. At this point, I should be real. Okay, but my opponent blundered, and all of a sudden, I'm down on the clock here, but I'm going to speed up very soon because speeding up is part of bullet, right? Winning on the clock. I guess that's the fun in bullet is it's all intuition. So as you can see, I should play f4, but I don't. Here my opponent is still up on the clock. I'm trying to bring my king close. King close. I couldn't, for some reason I didn't see this move. I was trying to find a way to bring my knight in. Trading here was a bad idea because now my opponent is already up a pawn and this is a tricky situation. But this is where the pre-moves come in handy. It's 4 seconds against 4. Right here I'm pre-moving. As you can see, my opponent is down to 1 second, 3 seconds for me. I'm just pre-moving every single one of these moves. And here luckily my opponent moved their queen there. I took it, and now we're just pushing pawns. They didn't even manage to get this pawn. And strangely I win on the clock here. I had zero point 0.2 seconds left, which is crazy. So let's look at the next game. Hopefully this one is more instructive. Okay, this was the last game that was the last game that I played in the 1e4. I went back to 1b3, but this was another London, and I love facing the London. Same setup. Bishop f4 here is a mistake, but my opponent wasn't punishing me, so we kept going for the same setup. Okay, trying to pin my queen. Here I bring my bishop back. It's not the best move, but I don't want to fall to some pins, especially in a bullet time control. And this game I believe was instructive because, as you can see, these pawn structures are very dangerous in bullet. Something similar tends to happen in the Coley system. White is going to try to attack us. I don't really have an attack here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just trying to maintain like a defensive structure, right? I remember once saw a game played by Karpov where he just moved one piece back and forth, realizing that it's up to white to attack. So there are some setups in chess where, as black, especially in one d4 system, as black, all you can do is just defend. And in this game, my plan is, excuse me, I have a bit of a flu. My plan is just to maintain the tension and play quickly. White has to do something drastic. As black, I'm just going to try to defend and not be down on the clock. So here, as you can see, my opponent is down to 23 seconds. I have 28. Okay, I'm just gonna move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's the plan until we trade it. I was actually planning on moving my queen to f4 during the game, but they kept preventing it, so I settled for this. Okay, as you can see, now the time advantage is going to come in handy because here I blundered by my knight. I saw this move, but for some reason I think I was playing hopeful chess. I hoped my opponent wouldn't punish me immediately, but of course my opponent is also above 2000, so they spotted it. And here I'm just down a piece. So it's bullets. I'm going to try to flag my opponent. Right, 10 seconds versus 6. Here we go for the rook trade. And this is hopeless for me, but now I'm just pre-moving, 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 pre-moving. I pushed the pawn. This was actually a mouse slip, but turned out to be the best option for me in this situation. I'm trying to maintain pressure on the knight so that I can at least win on the clock. And as you see very quickly, my opponent has zero point 0.4 seconds, zero point 0.1 seconds, and this is game over because they ran out of time. So trying to maintain a lead on the clock is very, very important in bullet. As a matter of fact, I would say that in bullet I try to win mostly on the clock than winning by having a good position. It's pretty much the best way to do it, right? Because as the time gets slower, your opponent starts to feel the pressure if they're low on the clock. Okay, let's get on to the next game where I can showcase my Nimzo. So like I said, the setup is 1 b3, bishop b7, e6. If they bring the knight out early, I go bishop b5. Yeah, that's b5 in hopes that I can trade my bishop for the knight. Typically, most people play e4 early, right? So with this bishop on this diagonal and with this knight pinned and taken, there are chances for me to be able to win a pawn right away. Actually, I've won games where I just play 1 b3, bishop b7, and next move I win the pawn on e5. Anyways, let's show the game. 1 b3, bishop b7 again, e3, knight f3, bishop e2. Okay, d4, c4. That's the plan. I'm hoping for d takes, and I'll follow it up with c takes. Okay, this is the pawn structure that I get. I know this move isn't really good, but this is a bullet game. I'm trying to throw my opponent off, and here they just blundered because now the queen and the rook both pinned. Right. Next game. That was really quick. And I believe this was the one of the last games I played against the same opponent. So I'm gonna go real time again. This was a London. Let's see. This time I went for the queen b3 setup. Now they cannot take the bishop here because we win the pawn. So again, knowing your openings comes in handy here because I know that I can just play that move, right? And my opponent doesn't blunder it because they know that they can't. If they capture, they lose the rook in a few moves. Okay. And I guess one other tip that has been helping me is this little analysis that I do, right? Because I know that I'm going to record the games or when I stream, I look at the games afterwards. And in this game, I noticed that I could have gone for b5. So analyzing the games actually helps me not make the same mistakes over and over. Now here my opponent was tilted. I'm just trying to go for the queen. There is a fork here. It's a bad move, but I'm hoping that my opponent is going to miss it because they're tilted. And I go for it, and now we go from being worse to just winning. Excuse me. And here my opponent resigned. And I believe that was the last game I played against that opponent. Okay. So now we're switching over to a different opponent. Let's see how this game went. Real time. We're playing with black as well. Now this was a Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit declined exchange. I actually think the Queen's Gambit declined. The exchange variation is one of the best openings for white at this level because, excuse me, black gets this annoying position where you're just defending, right? At least at the start, you don't really have chances to attack much, so you're just defending, defending, and you have to be patient. White gets a very clean or very slow minority attack, and black just has to defend. And this is already very uncomfortable for me. I already blunder, and just like that, I'm worse, right? So I should have gone a3. I did not notice the minority attack coming earlier. Otherwise, I would have gone rook b8 and a5, or just a5 early on. Anyways, I went for this g6 setup because I noticed at some point that after evaluating my games with the engine, I noticed that I could go for this. And in bullet, I feel like just blunting this bishop prevents me from blundering in the future. Okay. Now here my opponent spotted a nice tactic. You're going to see it in a second, which is they took the pawn, and when I take back, they take the bishop. So that was a nice little tactic. But lucky for us, it's a bullet game, and I'm just gonna push this pawn, threatening to promote. Also, like I said, I'm way up on the clock. I'm playing incredibly fast here. My opponent has 12 seconds, I have 28. Now we push the pawn. When it comes down to it, to the critical moment, my opponent is going to end up blundering because they're way lower on the clock, right? Now I'm trying to bring my knight in. I could have brought in the rook, but both the knight and the rook protect. My opponent only has 3 seconds left. I have 20, and at this point, it's just a matter of waiting for them to lose on the clock, which is what ends up happening actually. And here, yeah, my opponent loses on time. And then next game, let's look at another Nimzo Larsen real time. Let's go. Analysis board 1 b3, bishop b7, e6, knight f3, bishop e2, d4, c4 is coming next. Knight of. Okay, here I meant to play knight c3. Excuse me. Like I said, I have a tiny flu, but anyway, same setup. Okay, we trade. Now this bishop is stopped from getting in. Okay, we what? En passant. Now there was this move with rook d2, but rook d7, but for some reason I just didn't notice it during the game. I could have forked the two bishops. I thought they could be protected somehow. So again, in Bullet, you mostly play by using your intuition, right? So intuitively, I didn't spot that move. So I'm not really spending a lot of time calculating. I'm just playing quickly. Again, we are ahead on the clock, 42 seconds to 33. Okay, so it takes. Now you can get in. I'm up a piece now because our opponent just blundered their bishop. Okay, they're spending time to think. Oh, actually, my opponent resigned here. So again, this was another quick game. So that was another quick game where I basically just where were we? I basically just tried to play incredibly fast in the opening, and our opponent ended up blundering. So let's move on to the next game. And this is why I really love this setup. You basically play the same moves at the start, and as you can see, at this point I still had. Wait, is this correct? Yeah, I still had up to move 12. I actually have 59.5 seconds, which is crazy. Like, which means I basically pre-moved all this because I'm starting with 1 minute and I'm playing every move with like zero point 0.1 seconds. The first time I spend time thinking is on this move. So that's like crazy to think that all these moves were played with in less than a second. So that's the advantage of playing system setups for you. Okay, now let's look at the next game. Real-time analysis. Again, 1 b3, bishop b7, e6, knight f3, bishop e2. Okay, here I go for d3. Now in this game I noticed that my opponent was playing really quickly. And typically when your opponent is playing really quickly, you should also look out for traps, right? Or little bullet tricks because it shows that they're more susceptible to tactics. Or little tricks because they're playing so quickly. My opponent is adopting the same strategy that I have been, which is trying to stay ahead on the clock. The downside of that is the accuracy kind of goes off a little bit, and as you notice, they just end up losing a piece here to this simple tactic because bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, and we're up a bishop. So that's one of the downsides. So you might say winning on the clock kind of seems strange, or it's like you're not actually winning based on the best chess moves, but it's a trade-off that you make, right? By playing quickly, you are trading off with the accuracy of your moves. So you could end up losing very quickly on the actual board. Like this is which is what happened to my opponent. So at the end of the day, they were low on the clock, but their position is also busted because they just end up losing a piece. Okay, now let's look at the next game again. Real time. I really like this real time feature, like on lichess. I don't know if you can see it. Oh yeah, you can. So if I were to push, I'm just gonna push my screen here a little bit. So it's down here at the very bottom. You click on this hamburger menu, and then there's real time, slow, fast. Okay, now I think we'll push it back here so that you can see the opponent's name and rating. Alright, so let's head on over and look at the next game. Alright, so let's go. Let's go. Real time. Okay, this was a d4. Okay, this is like a Trampowski. So again, knowing your openings a bit at this level is important. We didn't play it in the best way possible, but I'm just trying to develop my bishops. And if I remember correctly, I blundered a piece in this game because there is a potential fork here, right? So very quickly you see that I ended up blundering one of my pieces. Okay, which is at this point, basically one of these pieces is gone. At this point the strategy changes from trying to actually win the game to trying to win on the clock. So at some point I'm going to start playing extremely fast, right? And trying to complicate the issue. So I switch from trying to play the best possible move to trying to play the trickiest move possible. So as you can see, I'm just trying to maintain some tension there, basically wasting time. Okay, this is an escape square. Also, I'm making these decisions within seconds, right? So they're not the most accurate moves. Actually, my opponent blundered the rook I did not see because I was too focused on trying to catch up on the clock. 28 seconds to 27. That's a simple tactic. I cannot take the rook because the rook takes my queen. I missed that. Now I have to readjust. I attack the rook. There's a potential to win the knight, so now I'm setting this up, but their rook defends and now the knight attacks my queen. I attack this knight, maybe trying to do something on the queen side. Again, the rook is hanging, but I miss it. But here, all of a sudden, white is better again, but for some reason my opponent just didn't move their knight. Okay, I trade queens. I thought I was faster in the end game, because this day, on this particular day, I was playing faster. So I wanted to trade queens, less pieces on the board, and then I can just play incredibly fast. Okay, so now we can take with check. And actually, I missed mate on one. This is checkmate. Somehow I missed that because I was too hell bent on trying to see how I can win a piece with a discovered attack, but that didn't work either. I have to bring my bishop back, checks, try to save my bishop. Now here I just blunder my piece. But again, I'm trying to play on the clock. As you can see, it's 2 seconds to 1, 2 to 0 point something. And now this is game over because I have 2.3 seconds. My opponent has lost on the clock. So at this point in bullet, it changes from I sacked my rook on purpose here because I know that, as you can see, my opponent spends like 1 second here, right? Because the rook is hanging, they have to decide to take the rook. And all of a sudden, my opponent doesn't even move their rook because they're just trying to play what's the fastest move. So, in bullet, sometimes it's not about the most practical. Sorry, it's not about the best move, but the most practical move in terms of saving you on the clock. Right, now let's look at the next game. So tips so far, I would say know your openings. Number one, playing quickly. System openings are some of the best, and analyzing your games. It's kind of hard to analyze your games in bullet, but what I would do, or to mimic what I do these days, because I sometimes record my games, you can just take a bunch of games, like 30 of your last games. You spend like 20 minutes trying to see the critical points. You can turn on the analysis board, look at the real time analysis, and then that will help you. Because typically, what happens is you make the same mistakes over and over, right? You lose a game due to a blunder in the opening today, and then tomorrow, the next day, your rating ends up staying on 1600 for months and months and months. Okay, that should go without saying, but let's look at the next game. Okay, another one b3, e6, knight f3, bishop e2. Excuse me. Oh, this flu is really messing me up. Okay, my opponent goes for a pawn push on the queen side. I actually didn't notice that they could take because now they have three defenders, right? But good for us is we are way up on the clock. My opponent was so hell bent on trying to win that pawn back. We got to have an advantage on the clock. Okay, now I know that there's tricks in this position. I'm trying to open things up. I should bring out my bishop, but here I just lock this up so that we can trade these bishops. I don't want to have any tricks with the rook taking my bishop there. Okay, but here I mess up a simple tactic, which I actually realized after I made that move. They can take, and after takes, which is why, okay, here takes, the rook takes my bishop, and now I'm down a piece also. I infiltrate with my queen because I'm trying to get them to spend time, right? So when you're down a piece, you switch from being practical to making moves that are confusing with the sole purpose of trying to win on the clock because it's a bullet game again. 34 seconds to 16 seconds. Okay, we trade. I trade there because I know this move comes with check and my queen is back in the game, right? So I'm making the most practical moves that save me the most amount of time. I bring my knight in, doesn't really do much, but I go back and forth, I save time. Luckily this comes with check so I don't end up losing a piece. I stack my knight here because my opponent only had 3 seconds. Now we're just gonna check them. this way. Then we come back with another check here. But my opponent loses on the clock. So here it's actually 27 seconds to 0 seconds, which means I played that entire game in 33 seconds, right? So again, it's a trade off. I'm trading off the accuracy of my moves for speed, right? Okay, this was actually a nice trade because if I took here, this is checkmate. So my opponent is also using tricks here. Now let's look at the next game. Let's go to the analysis, real time. Okay, now we got 1e4. We got to play a Sicilian. I play the Sicilian, so this is turning into the main line. This is all theory. Okay, knight d7. We're gonna go b5, then bishop b7. But here my opponent blundered because as much as they're attacking our pieces, our bishop attacks them and the rook is x-rayed. So the advantage of knowing my openings here is I know that this is a mistake and already my opponent is spending time on the clock. I don't have to spend time thinking there. Okay, my opponent decided to give up their queen for some activity, I guess, or to just make the position more complicated, right? And this is a position that I could actually mess up, especially in a bullet game. But lucky for us, because we played the opening so quickly, we are still ahead on the clock. So it's 43 seconds to 31. I'm going for tricks with mate here. That was a bad idea because now the rook defends. If the rook wasn't defending, this would have been mate. Okay. So as you can see, my advantage drops drastically despite being down a queen. Okay, my opponent takes. I should take the pawn. Do I see that? Yeah, I do see that. Okay. Now takes. Check. I decide to go in, attack the knights. Can we take? Now the knight has to go back, and now our advantage is back. Okay, here I just take the pawn, I believe. Yeah, I spotted that. Interestingly, I did not see that if I move the rook, this queen can take back. So I decided to defend the rook with my queen. Okay, but here my opponent just blundered. Lucky for us, we are still ahead on the clock, so it's queen and rook versus two rooks. We're better here. I'm not really trying to win on the board here. I'm already up on the clock, so I'm just going to play natural moves. Natural moves. This is pretty much a done deal here because I'm way ahead on the clock. Okay, I push the pawn. I was contemplating whether I could trade my queen for one rook, but I couldn't find that setup. Luckily for us, we saw this little trick where check, we trade and we win the rook. So this was game over. Okay, next game, real time. Excuse me, it's another Nimzo Larsen, same setup, same setup. So I would actually recommend that if anyone is watching this or anyone who watches this to try out this system in Bullet. I think it's one of the best. Hikaru Nakamura, who's one of the best speed chess players in the world, actually likes to go for Fee and Shadow setups, right? And there's a reason why. I guess this is one of the reasons. Now I'm just guessing there because obviously the skill gap between me, Mim, between me and somebody like Hikaru is extremely large. But I guess there's a reason why he's so much better at bullet and blitz than let's say rapid and right. The gap between him and others like him in bullet and blitz is much higher than it is in like rapid and classic. Anyways, this was a really bad game for me because there were so many blunders, but at least we were ahead on the clock. I blundered this piece. I noticed that, so now I have to try to defend this this knight. But now I also have to keep an eye on this bishop. So this became a tricky game. Lucky for us, my opponent made the move that I was hoping they would make. I go for the trade here because it's 35 seconds to 8, or it was to 9, and this was a bad move because the rook and the bishop are forked. So now, not only am I down a pawn, I also have doubled pawns. But lucky for me, it's the clock. So here I know that my opponent is trying to play very quickly as well. So both of us are going to be very low in accuracy. I'm just going back and forth, trying to preserve time. Zero point 0.4 seconds to 25, and here my opponent loses on the clock. So playing quickly is paying off for us in this game. Okay, so real time, d4, d5, another Trampowski. We saw this in one of the games. A different setup though, so I'll bring my bishops out. I'll bring my knight out quickly. I'm trying to have a solid pawn structure here so that nothing happens there. I don't know if this g6 move was the best, but I know that in these structures you could have something like this and bring this bishop here. Unfortunately, this bishop is very far away from our king side. Okay, we try to bring our knight in so that we could fork it with the bishop, but my opponent just goes for the trade, and that was a blunder actually because now we just lose the bishop because the bishop is attacked by the queen. Okay, check. Excuse me. I really hate having the flu. Okay, we take, they take, but now we're gonna lose this bishop as well. So maybe bringing my bishop here is a bad idea. So now in this game I was screwed because I'm down on the clock, but I'm also down a piece, right? I'm trying to play quickly, but my opponent just goes for the trade, right? I try to speed up, and at this point I knew that I was losing the game actually because this is hopeless. I didn't realize how low I was on the clock until after the queen trade, and as you can see here, I'm just tilted, and I lost this game pretty convincingly, right? And this was actually the end of my 15 game win streak. Just as I was about to get, actually, if I had won this game, I would have gotten to 2,200 right here. So it was kind of disappointing. I guess the nerves also got to me because before I was just playing chess for fun, right? At this point, I'm playing for something. I'm trying to achieve or accomplish a new milestone. So it was the tilt from being so close to getting to like 2,200 that pretty much set me off. And unfortunately, I was going to match. If I had won this game, I would have matched my longest win streak in Bullet, which is also 16 games in a row. So at this point, we just ended up achieving 15 games in a row. So, but in the next game, I had to get another victory to reach 2,200. So now we are at what? Let's see, 2,191, which means I now need to win two games. Okay, to get back to 2,200. Real time. Let's go. E4, C5. Okay, this was an. My opponent went for an Alapin. No, no, not an Alapin. Anyways, they went for. Wait, what do we call this again? Oh yeah, I think they were trying to go for the Smith more with here takes. Unfortunately for me, I messed up because yeah, I pushed d6 expecting like if my opponent had gotten knight f3 d6. So this is one of the instances where pre-moves pretty much screwed me because this would have been like the main lines of the knight of the open lines, which is what happens most of the time. So I played d6 a little bit too quickly, and I ended up being in a position where I was down a pawn. Lucky for us, being down a pawn in bullet is actually not the worst thing. Because here I don't take right away because I'm trading off. Ooh, and that was a bad idea. If my opponent had taken my queen, I would have been screwed because I would have been the one to lose castling rights. So I was about to say that being down a pawn for activity is actually not a bad thing in bullet. So we're just down one pawn. The computer says plus 2.8, but it's bullet. So lucky for us, I found this move b6, I believe. Of course, it took me. Oh yeah, I remember. I lost internet connection during this game. So at this point, I just lost the last game, and here I lose internet connection. So I thought I would lose two games in a row, and here my internet came back, and yeah, I just started playing incredibly fast here. So 41 seconds to 28. We trade rooks, but I won't have the open file. Okay, my opponent doesn't go for the rook trade. I'm going for tricks. I'm attacking their rook in case they miss that. So here, what do we do next? We bring our knight in because this knight defends. We trade knights. I want this. I want this open file all to myself. Okay, my knight can go in, but we don't go for the trade. We trade rooks, and here during this day, I was very confident in my ability to play faster than my opponents. So I'm going for trades here. There's less things for me to worry about, despite me being down a pawn and okay, me being down on the clock. But I think I was sure of myself to be able to play more accurately when we're down. When we both have like 5 seconds, I thought in this game I would be the more accurate player. Okay, I'm trying to push pawns here. I'm trying to promote. They cannot take this knight because I make a queen. And there I go for one last trick. They should take the pawn, but now I promote. They couldn't take the queen because it was defended by the knight. So now it's queen versus knight and king. So here you go. I'm trying to win the knight, my opponent spots it and they block. And at this point there are no checks on my king, so I can just pre-move. I only have 1 second left. I don't care about that queen. My next pre-move is going to be b4, I believe. b5 in this case. I just push the pawn, move my king around, and then I win on the clock. So in this position, you could say I intentionally sacked my queen because I know my opponent is going to be busy trying to win my queen. Right here, it's 4 seconds against one. At this point, just even though I'm ahead on in position, I'm going to lose on the clock. So the best move for me is if the knight is away. Now, of course, I'm not exactly thinking this through this much during the game because this is like a split second decision, right? So I haven't thought the entire variation through, but I'm thinking if they win my queen, or at least I remember thinking if they win my queen, there are no immediate checks on my king with their knight, which means I can just push my pawns freely, right? So from this moment on, as you can see, everything is a pre-move. I'm just pre-moving. I have 1 second left. I still have that 1 second because I'm just pushing the pawn right then and there. And the game ends with me having zero point 0.5 seconds. So it took my opponent 4 seconds to take my queen, bring my knight in, win this pawn, and bring their knight closer. And it took me zero point 0.5 seconds to push my pawn, push this pawn, lose my queen. Okay. So that was the practical choice and bullet. Okay. So it's 2,197 now because I just gained 6 rating points. And this was the final game that we played. So, let's see. So this was it. Against a 2,252 rated opponent as well. So this was a higher rated opponent. Which goes to show that maybe I have actually my actual strength is beyond 2,000 maybe. Okay, so let's go real time. Let's start from the beginning. 1 b3, bishop b7, e6, knight f3, bishop e2, d4. Okay, I'm trying to go for the trade here. So in this game, I guess I switched things up a bit, but we still have the advantage. We trade. I'm up a pawn here, I believe. Oh no, after they take, it'll be just equal pawns. Okay, now that was a blunder. I thought I could, after they take, I can come in with check, but the queen was defending that square, which I did not see. My opponent did not see that as well, so we're in a bit of a pickle here because our king is offside, right? Our king is in the center. But I'm up on the clock. So this was a tricky game. They trade pieces. I just want my king to get to this side, and my opponent is trying to open things up in the center so that I'm not able to keep my kings or get my king to safety. Now checks keep coming. I blundered that move because I could have taken the bishop with the knight, as was indicated by the engine. Okay, now our king is exposed, and apparently there's mate in 5, but here we're just trying to stay alive. This is the only move, so we have to go for it. Okay, they check me this way. Only move I take like that. Oh, now there's the checks keep coming. They should play c5. Okay, they do. I could take with the queen actually. I don't. Okay, but this is a mistake from our opponent because now our king goes back to safety. So this was a crazy game. Again, I'm also ahead on the clock, 27 seconds to 10 seconds. I should bring my other rook in, which I do manage to do. Okay, I'm trying to get my king to safety. Apparently this is the wrong way because I'm trying to go here. Okay, we trade. And here I spotted one trick. If I can bring my queen in, this is a potential mate. Unfortunately, we blunder our rook. But in this position, I just brought my rook back. I did not see that I could take the queen. It's zero point 0.1 seconds to my 17 seconds. And this was GG's. So after this game, I'm way above 2,000. So my current rating is 2,203, I believe. So again, this was a practical choice. I do not, at this point, I don't really care about my queen, right? Also, I did not see this move. I'm trying to put pressure on my opponent who has 1 second. So I take the bishop. I know that by the time I achieve this check, they will be way low on the clock. If my opponent had gone here, I would have actually sacked my rook. The time they spend taking this rook will be game over. Okay. So now we're above 2,200, which is a crazy new milestone considering that I just accomplished 2,100 recently. So if I go to my profile, let's see. We are at 2,203 bullets, which is great. Okay, so let's just go to bullets, bullet profile. Apparently, we are better than 90.9% of bullet players on leeches, which isn't bad, considering that most people play bullet on leeches as well. So, yeah. So, like I said, it's crazy that my lowest I was 1,722 rated. My longest win streak, like I said, I almost matched it today, but unfortunately, we only achieved 15 game win streak. My highest rated wins, I once beat a FIDE master, and these are the rest. So I don't normally play in tournaments on leeches, which is why I don't get paired up against people who are way lower or way higher rated than me. So in the past month, we've gained a lot of rating points on leeches and chess.com, which is crazy. Um, so I don't really play chess that often. So there've been a few years where I wasn't even playing chess at all. So our account is kind of old, but if I had stayed consistent, I'm pretty sure I would have achieved this a very, very long time ago. So hopefully, right now I'm trying to see how far I can increase my ratings by just playing more games. At some point, if I plateau, I may have to pick up like a book on chess. I'm hoping it's not anytime soon, but I'm glad I could get to 2,203 with the little knowledge that I have. Okay, so how do I summarize this video? What are my top tips? I guess picking up an easy to use opening like the Nimzo Larsen, which is what I've settled on, is a good tip for bullet to get above 2000. Because I have a simple setup, right? It's 1 b3, bishop b7, e6, bishop e2, which I've been playing a lot these days because most of the people above 2000 know that the trick in the Nimzo Larsen is to try to win the knight, right? So I don't go bishop b5 typically. Okay, what I mean is I'm going for this, and this. Typically, I go here because there are some cases where my opponent, let's say, plays e5. I go here and they play knight f3. I go e6. If my opponent goes like d5, I go here, and then don't notice what's happening. After this trade, I get to win that pawn. So this is what I mean. But a lot of my opponents at this level know what's up, so I end up just going bishop e2 because it's the fastest move. Okay. Another trick, mm, I would say, if you realize that you're low or you're down in the actual position, you're losing. Your only option is to win on the clock. So try to keep the position complicated. So there are some cases where you don't play the best move. Play the move that complicates the position and gets your opponent to spend time on the clock, right? So be aware of the clock. And I guess I would say trying to keep the position closed also helps in bullet, right? You want to play openings that uh, don't clarify the situation in the center immediately. Because when the central pawns are all gone, the plans for you and your opponent as well become very clear. So maybe you want to clarify things in the center when you are up ahead, up on the clock. Now you can clarify things because it becomes easier for you to win. But until then, trying to keep the position closed also helps. So I guess that's a tip that will make you way better in bullet than in, let's say, blitz, right? So I should also mention that I never play 1b3 if I'm playing blitz or rapid. I only play 1b3 in bullet. So that's another trick, or that's another tip. The third tip is to just know your openings in general, knowing a few things about your openings and different variations that you may face. Like we saw in that game where I played, in that Sicilian game, after my opponent had exposed their queen, I was able to play bishop b7 very quickly because I understand the first moves in my openings. And yeah, the last tip, and I think this is actually the most important tip, is take time to analyze your games. And I know that's kind of hard to do in bullet, right? You're not going to play a 1 minute game and then spend 5 minutes to analyze it. It kind of feels silly to do so, but analyzing your games will actually help you improve your chess. So you could just get a bunch of your games, like 30 of your games, and analyze them in one sitting. That also helps, like I'm doing here. So I'm making a video for YouTube, but at the same time, I'm also analyzing my games, and I've been able to spot some of the mistakes that I made, right? Like I could have gone b5 in that London system that I played. And I just noticed that while I was recording the video. So these are the main tips that you can use. So yeah, I just wanted to record this video because I wasn't streaming when I accomplished this milestone. So these videos also serve like, sometimes I go back to these videos to see how I used to play then and how I play now. So they also help me assess my own improvements in gameplay. So reaching this point, this is the end of the video. If you made it this far, big thanks for watching, and yeah, until the next milestone hopefully. So cheers and bye.